Hey all, I'm Travis, and this is the first in a series of videos designed around listening. Why listening? Well, in order to record good audio for your short films, podcasts, indie films, whatever you have, you're going to need to understand how to listen. What do I mean by listening? What I mean by listening is I want you to start actively analyzing the sounds that are coming into your ears and understanding what's making up what you're hearing around you. What you're going to get in this video is a series of dialogue recorded in different scenarios. It's all going to be recorded in this room to keep that situation controlled, but I'm going to do a couple of things to make the dialogue unusable in different scenarios. And I want to teach you all what those scenarios were, what most likely happened, and how to fix that in the future. Most of those things are best fixed when you're recording that sound. There's no magic button in post-production that makes audio better. The best thing you can do is record good sound in the first place. This is an example of dialogue that is not recorded so well. There is not enough signal-to-noise ratio to really be able to use this dialogue effectively. The microphone's in the right position, but as you can hear from the fan right off to the right of me, there is way too much background noise. This might seem very simple and obvious to you in this situation, but throughout my career doing post-production and audio, I get plenty of audio that comes to me where there's clearly a fan in the background or something like that. Maybe not always this bad, but you'd be surprised. This is not okay. What you can do on set is get rid of this. All right, so this right here is a great example of something that you'll encounter more often than not. Way too much background noise from traffic. This is going to be even harder to deal with because it's inconsistent in the background. It's not just a constant hum. There's different noises. There's squeaks from brakes. There's engines going by. All sorts of different stuff. This is a very common situation that you're going to run into. The best thing that you can do in this situation is try to maximize your signal-to-noise ratio as best as possible. All right, so in this example, what you can hear from my dialogue is my voice will sound a little distant because the microphone's not in the right place. This is something you're going to run into very commonly. This is the typical, they only had one microphone, they put that microphone on the camera. The camera's a good maybe 8 to 10 feet away from the subject or talent talking, and you get this result where the operator looking at the levels on the camera says, oh, I need to turn up the gain and make it a little bit louder. Yeah, that makes sense. You need certain levels to record. But what's happening right now is you're turning up the volume of everything. The microphone doesn't discriminate. It hears everything at once. So you're turning up that gain, which turns up the sound of my voice, but you're also turning up the sound of the ambient noise in the room as well. And in this case, you can hear what sounds like my neighbors walking around upstairs. There's something in the alleyway making noise. I think it's some sort of AC unit or something like that. And you'll probably hear a little bit of traffic noise too, as well as probably my computer back there. If the microphone is too far away for me to reach out and touch it, I can't reach out and touch it right now, it's not close enough to what you're trying to record. This is going to be an example of an off-axis microphone. What do I mean by off-axis? What I mean by that is every microphone has what we call a polar pattern, which is the way that it hears sound. Some microphones will hear sounds in all directions, and some microphones will be more directional and only hear what's right in front of them, and reject what's to the sides of them. Right now we're using a hypercardioid microphone, and it's designed to reject sounds from the side. So even though the microphone is actually right out of frame right here, it sounds like I'm distant because the microphone is off axis. I'm going to show you what it sounds like when the microphone turns on axis. I'm going to turn this real quick. Now the microphone is on axis with my voice, and you notice my voice sounds a lot more intelligible, and you can understand what I'm saying. I sound like I'm closer to the microphone. I ultimately sound better. Notice how in this example, for the most part, the ambient noise will be relatively the same levels depending on where the microphone's pointed. But when I point it away from my voice, like I'm going to do here, my voice sounds like this again. The ambience of the room might change a little bit because it's a directional microphone and it's pointing in a different place. But for the most part, when the microphone's off axis, you get this horrible distant sound, and when it's on axis, you get better sounding dialogue. So what you're going to hear right now is an example of usable dialogue captured in a realistic setting on set. When I say realistic, what I mean is we're not in a perfectly quiet room. There's some ambient room noise to this room. If you listen closely, you'll be able to hear my neighbor's music downstairs. You'll be able to hear an AC unit in the alleyway. You might occasionally be able to hear my neighbor upstairs moving around. You're not always going to have a perfect setting. But what we're doing here is putting the microphone as close to me as possible. It's literally right outside of the frame, right here. And what that does is it maximizes our signal to noise ratio. So the signal being my voice, the noise being all the extraneous sounds that you hear. The music downstairs, the neighbors upstairs, the machine AC unit in the alleyway, and in addition to that, the reflections of my voice bouncing around the walls. This is an untreated space. There's reflections bouncing off the walls. But what we're doing is we're minimizing all of that and maximizing the sound of my voice by putting the microphone as close to my voice as possible. The reason why I want to give this to you all as an example of usable dialogue is because you're not always going to have a perfect space. You're probably never going to have a perfect space. You're never going to be filming inside what we call an anechoic chamber, a chamber that's designed to not have any self noise and not let any noise in, and minimize reflections within the room itself. You're not going to have that. You're going to have this, a typical apartment or a typical location somewhere. Even sound stages I've been on are rarely perfect. So now that we've listened to all those different examples of dialogue recorded in different scenarios, what I want you to do is remember all those different scenarios. You've likely run into those. You've likely run into dialogue that sounds like that. Remember what happened, remember why it happened, and use that going forward in the future for production. And use it for yourself, for those of you in post-production as an editor, to really be able to identify what dialogue is for the most part going to be unusable. There's no magic button that makes things go away. There's no magic button that makes my voice sound better. Ultimately, what you have to do is really maximize that signal to noise ratio. I'm always going to talk about that in any video that I have about recording audio. That's one of the best things you can do, is get the microphone closer to what you're trying to record, increase the amount of signal, my voice, and decrease the amount of noise. All that ambient noise, music downstairs, neighbors upstairs, machines in the alleyway, traffic outside that way, whatever you have. Getting the microphone closer to your subject is more often than not going to be your best bet. I hope you enjoyed this listening exercise video. I will be releasing a few more videos specifically on this topic, dealing with different types of listening exercises. Some of those will include dialogue that has some slight issues with it, but is ultimately usable. And I'll teach you what you can do to remove some of those sounds. In addition to that, I'm going to have some listening videos on different microphone types and what those sound like in different positions.